Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Cars That Made Us podcast. I am in a BMW 330 Ci with the editor-at-large of Autocar, Matt Prior. Matt is at this year's celebrating 20 years with Autocar,
okay.
right?
Well done. Yeah,
so
very good.
Matt joined in 2005 after working with Channel 4 for their automotive website. Matt's current works can be found on Autocar's website, in the magazine, in a podcast, and on YouTube. And of course, you've got your column as well, Prior Conviction,
Yes.
which is one of the most incredibly brilliant titles for a column I have ever heard.
You're very kind. I tell you who thought of it, and it wasn't me, and it wasn't anyone at Autocar, but for a time, Haymarket, which publishes Autocar, also had piston heads as part of its stable. And I used to write a column on piston heads, and it was the office manager for piston heads, not an editorial person at all, who came up with a title for the column on piston heads, and she called it Prior Conviction. And then at some point, my Autocar column has become that as well.
Yeah, because it was Tester's Notes.
It was Tester's Notes. Yes, it was Tester's Notes, but now in a recent mag redesign, we've got a new column called Testing, which the road testers write, and they circulate it between them. And then so my column needed a new name, and we've since adopted Prior Conviction for that. But I'm very grateful I can't remember her name because she hasn't worked for Haymarket for 15 years probably. But anyway, whoever came up with it in the first place, it is one of those annoyingly good names for a column that I wish I'd come up with, but didn't.
Yeah. Whoa, so you weren't convicted of anything then?
I have I have a clean criminal record. I have a clean driving license, and so yeah, all things squeaky clean.
Yeah. So as we've established, you've been in this game for a good amount of time. You're so experienced in this world now.
Yes, I still think that I should be like winning awards for, or nominated for awards for up and coming persons. Do you know what I mean? And I just think, and yet somehow I've never won an award in my life, by the way. But when people go, oh yeah, well, someone's shortlisted for 30 under 30, and I think, oh, maybe I'll be in a shout with that. But no, that was a long time ago. I've been doing this for 27 years, because I worked 20 years on Autocar, 5 years for Channel 4's website before that, and then 3 years with an agency called Motoring Research when I was fresh out of university. So it has been a long time, but doesn't feel it. But then I read a thing the other day that said there are several phases that the brain goes through in your life, and there's one that happens when you're quite young, there's one that happens, I think, in your mid-20s or something, and the next one isn't until sometime until you're 50-something. And then there's a final one when you're in your late 60s or 70s or something like that. So I think that could be why a lot of middle-aged blokes like me still feel about 28, 30. Because that was the last time we had a physical change in our brains. And the whole thing that people don't like getting old.
Yeah, of course. So along that journey then, Autocar's clearly the place where you've spent most of your time. Mm-hmm. So what makes Autocar the place to be for you?
It is... We had an editor a couple of editors ago, and he worked across all of Haymarket's titles at one point or another. And he said, in some meeting once, he said, what you've got to remember is that What Car is the UK's best buyer's guide, and Autocar is the most important car magazine in the world. And I like it because we cover everything. Yeah, it's an enthusiast publication, but it is a weekly, so it's really busy, which is cool because I like being busy. I like having work to do. Do you know what I mean? I like it is much easier for somebody to be telling me what to do every week than it is for me to come up with stuff. And there was a time when people would spend a bit of time on the magazine and then go freelance. The freelance world is probably not what it used to be, but also I just really like being at the front of stuff magazine wise. We are, because we still have a print publication, because we're online, because we're on YouTube, because we're on podcasts, because we're on all the socials, we are across the lot.
Yeah.
And it's just every day there is something cool to tell a story about and to report on. I really like that. I mean, cars were my thing before publishing was my thing, but I really enjoyed both. And to be able to tell cool stories about cars and actually build a relationship with a reader so that when we get letters and they go, oh, I enjoyed what you read about this and about that. I read car magazines when I was a kid, and I got to know who the writers were through reading their work. And I used to know, okay, this writer likes that sort of car, this writer likes that sort of car.
Yeah.
And you build a relationship with them in a way, as you do with podcasts and YouTubes and everything else these days as well. You get an affinity with somebody. And I think if you find something that you can do and you enjoy it and you like doing it and you like talking to people about it, just keep doing it. That's why I've stayed. That's why I've stayed for 20 years. I'm no longer qualified to do anything else, and I work at what I think is the best mag in the business.
Yeah,
we've got a great team. It's a good product. It knows what it is. It knows what it does. I mean, I get to report on my favourite industry.
Yeah, and just do that for a living.
Yeah,
and of course you not only does Autocar do a bunch of different platforms, but the more true way of saying it is you do all of these platforms, because you are the one on not only the podcast and in the magazine, obviously you've got the column as well.
Yeah.
And you're on YouTube. There's Matt Prior is inescapable. So
yes, I'm afraid I've had mates who say to me, "Oh, I was looking at buying a car the other day, and I can't believe it. You cropped up on I was doing some research, and you cropped up on YouTube." I'm like, "Yeah, sorry, I am. Yes, I do. I do. I know I was never trained as a broadcast journalist, and YouTube comments will tell you as much. But anyone who thinks they're their own worst critic needs to present on YouTube, because then you find out you're not your own worst critic. But yeah, yes, I am. I seem to have become, just by hanging around for long enough, basically. Yeah. I seem to have become the sort of lead features writer and presenter. But it's perseverance and not going anywhere for 20 years. And eventually, that is what happens in publishing. At some point, they'll give you a job title with the word editor in it, because that's just standard. At some point, they go, you should become associate editor or features editor or digital editor or what. They give you that in lieu of giving you any more money. And then at some point, you just end up being the person that people know and like. We do surveys at work of readers. We'll ask them what they think. Yeah. We ask readers, listeners, viewers what they think of what we do. And when I started 20 years ago, we had those, and the answers would come back. I love this writer. I love that writer. I love so and so. I love this bit about it. What they didn't love was me, because they don't know who you are. But actually, after a time, and I kind of write similarly to the way I have the way I was 20 years ago, really. But now when we do those surveys, they go, "Oh, I really like Prior's column," and it's just because it takes a long time to build up a relationship with somebody who reads your time. It's like listening to a radio show. If they change presenter, you go, "Oh, I don't know about this," and it just takes time to build a relationship with somebody who reads your work.
Yeah,
I think that's just a thing.
So, what platform has it been the most easy to get a relationship with the viewer?
Oh, interesting.
Reader?
I think the podcast has come easily because we only started it 3 years ago, and I was so actually the people who listen to the pod, there's quite a big overlap, I think, between print magazine reader or digital subscriber and podcast listener. So from that point of view, the podcast has gone really well straight from the off. People really love it. But when I started presenting videos on YouTube, they were used to somebody else, and some of them still are, in fact. So that's harder. Road testing is easier, but because road testers' names don't necessarily appear front and centre on a road test, and they're all written to a specific sort of house style rather than somebody's own personal style. So actually, that's quite straightforward, because you're just doing the road testing. But you're just doing the road testing business that has been done since 1925, whatever it is. And actually, when you read a road test, because Autocar does is one of the few magazines that still goes to industry test tracks.
Yep.
Do the figures, as we call it, on cars. So acceleration figures, braking figures, fuel economy, measures, weights, and all that sort of stuff. And that has been done to a very similar style for decades. And if you read a road test now, and then if you flick open a magazine from 30 years ago, flick open a magazine from 50 years ago, there is a certain, I mean, language does evolve and change, but there is a certain style of doing things. And that's actually very easy. That's very straightforward to fit into. And actually road tests are written in sections. So it's sort of chunks of 300, 400 words at a time about ride and handling. Well, I mean, any good motoring journalist can do that to a standard and to a standard of quality, but also to a sort of a spec, if you like. You know, give me 400 words on house style about ride and handling of an Audi A3. Fine.
Yeah.
Good motoring journalists can do that. So.
Yeah. So it must be quite interesting going from that, particularly when you started YouTube, because all of a sudden you have to present it differently, don't you? It's a completely different platform.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and most people are very nice about it. And so, you know, it's weird. I trained as an engineer, not a journalist in the first instance, but then to sort of add broadcasting to it as well, you're very much learning on the fly. And when you write something, even if you're an inexperienced journalist, you send it over. We've got a team of sub-editors who will go through it and you'll get it back. And crikey, I remember the first couple of road tests I wrote, you know, somebody would go through it with a red pen and go, look, you need to reorder this, you need to get that the other way around and do this. And you go, oh, okay, fine. But when you've spoken to a camera, well, that's it. You've said it. So eventually that gets easier because you know what works and what doesn't. But you almost got to edit it before you start, because while you can play around with stuff in an edit suite, and we have great videographers who edit our videos, but they can only edit what you've said.
Yeah.
So it's a harsher medium, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because you can do several takes, but once you've said it, that's it. You can't change your mind. And quite often, you're doing it when you've only just got in a car, or if you don't have very long in a car. You know, if we go on a product launch, the drive route might be 3 hours. At some point, you've got to present 15 minutes to camera during that 3 hours. But then actually later that day or the following day, you may find out more about that car that you wished you'd known about beforehand, that you could have talked about it. It's easier to be wrong about a car on video.
Yeah.
Whereas you come back afterwards, some manufacturers might not tell you the pricing until later, which can make a huge difference to how you feel about a car and its competitiveness in the market. I know we said, we gave you a steer and we said that car might be 35 grand. And then when it comes to it, before the video is released, they go, actually we released prices and it's going to be 20% more expensive than you think.
Yeah.
That affects that car's competitiveness in the market, but you've already recorded what you've said about it. So it's a different medium, I suppose.
Yeah. And then you've got to make sure you get all of your stuff out in a timely fashion, because, unlike a magazine where people are happy to wait a few days for that magazine to come out and then get a very in-depth piece, you have to put out a YouTube video right when or just before everyone else does.
Yes, it can be. More and more, we're driving cars under what we call embargo. So the world's journalists might spend 3 or 4 weeks driving a car, and then we can all write about it we can all release what we think about it at the same time, which is just fair, actually. It's something that I think most of us think is fine, because it gives everybody a fair crack of the whip, because not everybody can be first to drive a car, and because of the way the internet works, it's global. You know, if a first drive appeared on a German website 3 weeks before it appeared anywhere else, we'd be annoyed about it. So actually it does work quite well. But there's more scope for editing with writing than there is scope for editing with video or audio.
Something I love about writing particularly is that because you're constantly working on it, you can basically edit it right up until it goes
100%.
goes out. So you can be sitting down with a pint in the evening, and then all of a sudden your ears will prick up and you go, oh my God, I know exactly what to write for this thing.
Yes. I used to keep a notebook by my bed, but I now keep my phone nearby, and because you can wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, I've just had a great line. It's come into my head and I need to write that down. On vid, it's too late. I mean, you can do voiceover and stuff later, but it's not the same. Whereas, if you're writing, you can go, I can still get that into the copy. And I just had that really nice thought about that. And I really like that about magazine craft and writing craft. And that's one aspect I was probably always a better writer than I was an engineer, but that's something I've come to really love about writing professionally is thinking of a really nice turn of phrase and finding a way to put it into copy. Having said that, my favourite jobs are effectively a bit like a sports report. You drive the car, you get out, there is no embargo, and you have to write it straight away. Love doing that. That's my favourite bit. And to see it published 2 hours after I've got out of the car or less, I just get such a... One of the favourite jobs I did was when we weren't allowed to travel so much, sort of post-pandemic, was driving a Rolls-Royce Ghost Series 2, I think. Is that the small saloon, isn't it? The Ghost Series 2?
Yeah, I think so.
And it was driving it from the factory to a place in Hampshire, and then we were getting driven back to the factory to get back in our cars to drive home. And I remember sitting in the car park at Goodwood. It was summer, so it was quite nice and warm, finishing my copy and uploading it, and then somebody having a quick read through and setting it live, and knowing that as I got back on my motorbike to ride home, that I'd written it. Nobody else had published it at that point. I was really happy with the copy I'd written. I think the verdict was right. And it just, that immediacy, I really like that immediate of just going, that's it, I've done. There are two things that we can be when we publish copy. We can be first, or we can be best. I'd like to be both. I would take one or the other, but on that instance, I sort of thought, okay, I've nailed both here. This is it. This is really good. I don't always love what I wrote, but I remember thinking, I've written a really nice copy. I've got the verdict right. No one else has yet published it because they've been having dinner and a chat or whatever. And I was just going home just thinking, and that's what I really admire about really good, really well-written sports reports. Okay. And I know, fine, if you're watching a cricket match or you're watching a football match, you can start to write it at the same time as it's still going on. But if I go onto like the Guardian football website and read a football match report that has been uploaded 20 minutes after the match finished, and it's really well written and it's got really nice turns of phrase in it, I'm just like, that is. I really admire that. I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah. So speaking about turns of phrase, then, do you find that video has less creative? Does writing allow you to be more creative?
Probably the way that we work. Probably in the way that we work, it does, but only because you can be very creative with video, but I think you have to be creative before you start. You have to have had the ideas before you get there, and then plan to do it, because otherwise you can. And that's hard with sometimes the way that we work, because we get a car for a very short amount of time and we know nothing about it sometimes before we get there. So in the end, you go, well, what do I need to do? I need to do a piece to camera where I tell people what it's like, and I need to do something where I tell somebody what it is before I tell them what it's like. So you can get into quite a formulaic thing with it just because time and resource dictates that that's what you do. So it is harder, I think, to be... Harder is the wrong word. It's more time consuming to be creative on video.
Yeah.
And more resource heavy. Whereas you can be very creative with words because it's just you sitting at a keyboard. So that's fine. And then somebody will read it and go, it doesn't make sense, but you write it. But that's all part of the process, Whereas with video, I think if you're going to be creative with a video, you kind of need to know how you're going to be creative before you start with it. Whereas with writing, you can just drive a car and then worry about the creativity later. But that's the nature of things. I mean, you can do certain stuff in an edit. You can.
Yeah, you
stuff.
can. It's
But you can only work with what you've already got.
Yeah, yeah. And to an extent, you are quite limited working with cars for video because, well, you know, you can have editorial creativity, but a lot of the shots you have to get are a bit like with photography of cars.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
There's just a level of formulaicness
Yeah.
that you just have to follow,
Yeah,
really.
you need I mean, if you watch any car video, the car review video, there'll be car-to-car tracking shots. There'll be drive-bys, up-and-bys, whatever people variously like to call them. There'll be the details and statics and wides, and you've got to get them all, because you can't really get by with that. You can skimp on some of the others, but if you've got the car for a short amount of time, you've got to get the pictures, and you've got to get the pictures, and you've got to get the footage. I had an art editor. This is before I was doing video. An art editor once said to me about going out on jobs to do whatever it was, a group test or whatever. And he said, and it's stuck with me, and he was absolutely spot on. And it doesn't make comfortable listening for a journalist, but he was right. He said, look, if you're going out to do a job, you don't get to drive the car quite on the roads you want to, then that's okay. And if you don't quite spend enough time driving it up and down a hill, or you don't spend enough time driving on a motorway or whatever, that doesn't matter so much, because you can make up the words, but you can't make up the pictures. Now, we don't make up words, but you can say, I didn't necessarily get time to drive it as long as I'd like on a motorway, but I can tell you on a back road it does this. But what you can't do is have no pictures to go with that in a magazine. So pictures and getting footage still very much do dominate what we do. I'm sorry, I know we're talking shop a lot, but that is, those aspects are, our days are dominated by that. And actually not everybody who provides cars to us sometimes understands that. They go, we've got a really good packed schedule, we're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do that, you're going to find out this, you're going to find out that. You go, that's great, but when are we going to take some pictures and footage of this car?
Yeah.
Because if we don't have it, we don't have a story. Mm-hmm. Whereas actually, if you don't tell me to the nth degree about whether you're going to introduce active suspension in 2 years' time, it doesn't matter. I can live without knowing that. But what I can't live without is a car-to-car tracking photograph. So that's there aren't many frustrations in this job, because it's a great job to do all the time. But sometimes every job has its ups and downs, and sometimes you just think, just give me the car. Just stop talking to me now. Talk to me when it's dark at night, and I can't take any, and we can't be out driving and taking any photos. But right now, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Please just give me the car and let's get on with it.
Yeah, just want to get out there.
Yeah.
No.
But sorry, I'm aware we're talking shop.
Oh, it's fine. Well, it's the point of a podcast, isn't it, to just sort of, let conversation just sort of lead wherever it leads. Speaking about less favorable parts of the job then, because I'm quite curious. Every job has, I've written a book, every job has a shit-flavored sandwich. And every job has that, but what separates a good job from a bad job, ultimately, is that in a good job, you're okay with eating that sandwich.
Yeah,
but
gotcha.
In a bad job, it's a really, really bad tasting sandwich, and you just can't.
And you can't face it.
So I'm curious, with this job, what do you find to be the what's the shit flavored
the less good flavors?
Yeah.
Not a lot. I never wake up, and I did when I haven't had many proper jobs, but I used to, from time to time, on an engineering industrial placement, I used to sometimes wake up and think, I don't want to go and do that today, because there are people I don't want to have to deal with. This is going to be difficult. I don't want to have to talk to them, because I know that's difficult, whatever. I never wake up and think I don't want to go to work.
Yeah.
Never. And I love that about this. And I really love that about this job. I never wake up and think, oh, I wish I was ill. It never occurs to me. I always, every day is good. I woke up today knowing I had to come to the British Motor Museum that we're parked outside now and talk to my colleague Steve Cropley to record a podcast. I mean, and then I come to talk, and then I grab a sandwich and I come to talk to you. What a great day at work! What an amazing day at work! I get paid for this. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And then yesterday what did I have to do yesterday? That's the other thing, I can't remember what I had to go and do because I just go and do it. I can't remember what I did yesterday. I had to go and do something. Oh, I had to go and take this car in for an airbag recall yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's no big deal. I haven't had to go to a car dealer for a work car for a long time. So that's quite nice to do. And they look after you and you sit down and have a cup of coffee and write some stuff while I'm there. That's great. And then started this week, I spent 3 days in Spain driving some BMWs and finding out stuff about BMWs and talking to BMW experts about their upcoming cars.
Yeah.
That's also cool. I mean, this is stuff that I would like to do for fun. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but if there is something, I spend a lot of time in airports where there is dead time and I cannot use it any other way. I'd have had to get to the airport for 5 o'clock Monday morning. So I was at a hotel Sunday night. I'd rather have been at home. But that would have meant getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to drive to an airport. And that's just really tiring. So the sort of personal time it eats into, because I've got cars at home, a couple of classic cars that I'd love to spend more time working on, but I can't because this is a 70 plus hour a week job.
Yeah.
But so what? Lots of people do jobs that take an awful lot of their time and they hate them.
Yeah.
I mean, as I sort of say to some of my colleagues, what we do, we work hard, but it isn't hard work. You know, it's not
completely.
We do work really long hours, more than I think our employer realises sometimes. I sort of think, who knows how many hours I do. There's sort of the immediate team I work with and my family. And out of those, who really cares about the work I do will probably be my family, actually, are the only ones who really care how much they don't see me. And do other people within the business know what hours we do? And do they appreciate it? No, probably not. But we like doing it, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And we like the product. That's the thing. If we didn't care about the product, you could resent doing this. If you weren't into it and you didn't think it was a good product, you could well dislike the flavour of the sandwich. And sometimes they do. Sometimes you do get people who come in and they just go, I'm not doing this. I'm working too hard. It's too long hours, and and the pay's not good enough. And why am I doing this when I could go and work for somebody else and get paid more and work less hard? But we just really like, I say me and the immediate colleagues I work with.
Yeah.
We just like doing it.
Yeah, you've got to really like the job, and obviously you do, and you do a lot with your time because of it. So when you're going about your day in the week, how do you figure out what thing in that week is going to be picked out and put in prior conviction?
Oh, I don't. It's a blank sheet of paper on a Thursday morning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I keep a notes app on my phone, and when I have a column idea, I will put it in, and then depending on how much time I have, when the column is due, I tend to sort of have a look. If I've got no ideas, I'll look through this app and think, okay, I can write about this week. Sometimes it's very obvious. So in the magazine that's coming out next week, it will be stuff about electric driver's cars, because I've just spent time with BMW talking about that. So that was fine. But sometimes, my deadline is sort of Thursday morning for that column. The sub-editors would like it earlier. The earlier they get it, the better. The happier they are, really. But if it gets to them sometime on Thursday morning, that's when it should be around. I think a really hard deadline is kind of when they come back from lunch on Thursday. So it should be absolutely in by 2 o'clock Thursday. But sometimes it can be 1 o'clock on a Thursday and I've got a blank sheet of paper with a flashing cursor and I still don't know what to put in it. But if I go on the Autocar, in extremes, I can go on the Autocar website and just pick a news story and think, okay, I can write an analysis or comment about that. And that's quite easy. It's quite easy. They're not always the most interesting. The nice thing about writing a weekly column, and I think I would struggle more if I wrote a monthly column. If I write one that isn't great, I can do another one next week. It's only another 7 days and I get to do it again. I get to have another go. So I think if you wrote a column once a month, or less frequently than that, that would increase the pressure on it, because if you wrote a bad one, I mean, you've got to wait a long time to write another.
Yeah.
So, and the nice thing about a column is they can be anything. It can be review related. It can effectively be an extended news story if you like. And I've written a couple of those that really sort of are. I wrote one about Cam, who do Porsche 912 resto mods. They released a limited run of not quite so expensive ones that they haven't fitted all the carbon to. It's got a sort of stock engine that they're making. Fine, I can write 700 words effectively as a news story about that, because it's not fit for the news section, because we don't really write such weird, about such nichey sort of stuff in the main news section. So yeah, I can get to Thursday morning and then write to our news editor, Will Rimmel, and say, mate, what isn't in news this week?
Yeah.
That, you haven't got space for in the mag, but I could pony up into a column.
Yeah.
And then sometimes things are really obvious. And it helps. The best thing to write a column about is if you really love something or you really hate something, and to have a real opinion on something. But I'm not a massively opinionated bloke. It would be much easier if I was much angrier about much more to write a column, because the best, in inverted commas, columnists probably are furious about something all the time.
Yeah,
but I'm just not. I'm just not that cross about. I mean, I do get cross about things, but most of them aren't motoring related. So what do you do? But yeah, if I had a column in a national newspaper, I could get furious about everything much more easily. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure I could get furious about water companies or infrastructure or whatever. But I mean, but there's always something. Colin Goodwin, our contributor, once said to me, he said, look, mate, if somebody said they wanted 500 words of opinion in 20 minutes, you and I could do it. And most motoring journalists can do that. And he's right, if it comes to, and there's nothing quite so inspiring as a deadline.
Oh, yeah, for better or worse.
Towards you.
For better or worse. So you mentioned EV drivers' cars. And I'm curious to hear your opinion on what you think is pretty good out there right now. I know that the Ioniq 5N is fantastic. It masks its size and its weight incredibly. No, I haven't.
If the chance comes, then yes.
There are so many cars I haven't driven. I mean, the limitations of being 21, I suppose.
Yes. That will...
The way the weather's been changing, all of a sudden, I'm getting into my car, or at least I'm running a bit late for uni, and I go, screw it, let's just drive. I'll drive. And then I get to my car, and it's covered in just ice, and I know it's going to need demisting, and I have to sit there for 10 minutes, and I go, well, I could have just walked this. So I'm going to have to start thinking about all of that stuff again now. Yeah,
it's also become that irritated with other people's headlights time of year. Very quickly.
God. People round here, I swear to God, when I'm around home, nobody knows how to turn off their high beams.
Oh God, it's just so infuriating. But also some of it is the auto high beam. Some of those systems are better than others.
Yeah.
Some of them will blind, and also I see so many more cars these days. I've written a couple of columns about this because it's easy to get angry about. Who clearly get in their car, they see that they've got some headlight projection in front of them, but actually that's just their daytime running lights, and off they merrily trot onto the motorway in a dark coloured car on a gloomy, drizzly evening that just basically makes them invisible. And it's just, I don't know. There seems to be an idea that somehow the brighter the headlights, the safer you are. I don't think that, one, the data necessarily backs that up.
No, not at all.
And two, it's really infuriating for other drivers that are driving along and just constantly being dazzled by oncoming people's headlights, and then you sort of lose track of exactly where you are on the road. And anyway, that's it is. I don't find this, but when you talk about unpleasantly flavoured sandwiches, if you do what you love for a living, that can ruin your enjoyment of what you love. And I do know people who've done, well, I really love this subject, so I'm going to work in it. And then actually what they find is they don't enjoy it anymore because of the pressures that come with it. And it's, I must say, if I felt that, I would have to stop doing this. But I don't feel that, thankfully. But.
So what do you think separates loving passion for something and being able to take that passion and work with it 70 hours a week?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's the stresses that come with it. I mean, there are certain things, there are jobs within cars that I think would ruin my enjoyment of cars, I'm sure. I know somebody who really loves horse racing, and he worked in horse racing in the sort of sponsorship side. So, but when a race was happening, his focus wasn't on what was going on the race course. It was looking at the sponsorship boards around, and it was about the other clients and suppliers and stuff he's got around him, and the stress of dealing with those things actually spoiled his enjoyment of the bit of the industry he was working in. So he had to go and do something else. And I think if I get to that stage, I mean, it hasn't so far, thankfully, happened, but if it did get to that stage, and it occasionally has days when I mean, all jobs have their...
Everyone needs a break at some point.
All jobs have their days now and again.
Yeah.
When just something has happened, you think, I just want to do something else. But it happens so rarely to me that it's fine. But I forgot why I started saying...
So you're saying that...
where I was... Oh, the headlight thing.
Yes.
If I was infuriated about cars every single day, I suppose eventually I'd go, I can't work with this anymore. I'd have to do something else.
Yeah.
But,
well, I guess you can vent everything through your column, right?
it's really helpful that, Yeah, it probably is helpful, because if something's really cheesing me off that much, there's a column out of that, at least.
Yeah.
So that is something. Like some of the ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance System, is so bad on some cars. But, and that would, if I didn't have an outlet to say how infuriating that is, and also sometimes it makes a difference. We write stuff, and people do read it. I had a car that had really disruptive ADAS, really intrusive, really spoil your enjoyment of driving. But not just spoil your enjoyment of driving, it got stuff wrong all the time. And you could switch some of those things off, but then they would at some point cut back in of their own accord. We wrote about it quite a lot. And I got a note from the UK importer who said, we've sent all of your stuff back to the factory, to the development centre. We've taken, there's a reasonable amount of feedback, but this feedback that you wrote about this and this happening, they are changing the system in the car. And they will over the air update it to all of the other cars so that it will now no longer do that annoying thing. That's quite gratifying. Because we don't have a big, we're not part of the industry. We report on the industry. We do have some influence on what happens in the industry, but when something like that happens, you go, good, I've made a car better and actually less infuriating and safer, because the better a system works, the less likely you are to switch it off. So we've improved a car. That's quite cool.
Yeah.
That's quite cool. I mean, that's not my job. My job is to inform readers about where, that's the other thing. A part of the job is informing readers of where they would best be spending their money. And that's,
ultimately.
Yeah.
Especially for Autocar, because you're basically like the car newspaper. At least that's how I like to see you.
Yeah. There is a school of thought, I think still exists, that what you read in Autocar now will influence what other people say about cars in times to come as well. And we've had people say that.
No, absolutely. There's a model that represents this in how opinions are communicated. So there'll be someone at the top who is spouting the info, and then there'll be opinion leaders who basically tell everyone, who have come up with an opinion, and then they tell everyone else what to think.
Yeah.
And then those opinion leaders and the people who listen to them are going to be the ones ultimately that get all of the thoughts and feelings out there. So there might be one person who reads Autocar, and then they've got all of these opinions on this, that, and the other, and then that opinion is passed on to someone else who will communicate it to someone else, and ultimately all of that comes from Autocar.
Yeah, it is funny that's it's impossible to quantify, but it's certainly, I think it's true, and I think it remains true that somebody will have their mate or their colleague who knows a lot about cars, and the person who reads Autocar will quite often be that person.
Yes.
So actually, when we're talking about not just the influence of magazines, it's not just it's not just the immediate circulation, or the immediate numbers that read the website, or the immediate numbers that watch YouTube. That person becomes that person filters that out thereafter, and I like that.
Yeah.
And then, funny enough, you'll find somewhere down the line there's a what's the word I'm looking for? There is somebody will go and be deliberately contrary of maybe a year or two down the line. Somebody will go, I'm writing a column this week of why I never really liked the GR Yaris as much as everybody else said they did.
Okay.
There'll just be some little, and I can feel it'll be coming, right? That we'll all love a car. It'll happen with the Ioniq 5N at some point. I don't think it's happened yet, but I haven't read one. But I bet at some point I'm going to read, somebody going, I never really liked it that much in the first place, and here's why I didn't buy into the hype. But it happens with some sort of it cars. Do you know what I mean? There's a car that everybody loves, and then about 2 years later, somebody will just go, you know what, I didn't like it that much.
What's your it car?
Oh, of the moment?
Yeah.
Well, as in, what's the thing I love at the moment, or what's the one I don't like as much as everyone else?
Yeah, that one.
What don't I like as much as everyone else? I don't know. Lots of people really liked the Volvo EX30 when that was launched, and I had a massive problem with its infotainment system and the location of some of its buttons. Like the fog light button was on a touchscreen, which is not awful in itself. It's not ideal in itself. It shouldn't be on a touchscreen. It should be on a hard button that you know where it is and you can feel for it. Because when you want a fog light, you may be doing 60 miles an hour on a motorway and you enter a bank of fog. You want the fog light now, which means I want to know where it is.
Yep.
Not only was it on a touchscreen on the EX30, it was within a menu on the EX30. So
that shouldn't be legal.
Volvo, and this is Volvo. Yeah, exactly. I agree. It shouldn't be. And this is Volvo, right? This is the car manufacturer that bills itself as one of the safest car. Safety is their watchword. So they think it's okay or they thought at the time that it would be okay for me to be driving along the motorway, hit a bank of fog, which happens actually because I drove down the M40, and that bit as it goes up over near Stokenchurch, it goes uphill, goes through a cutting, and quite often you can get a bank of fog there. You can be going, no fog. Yep. I want a light to tell people, so that people can see the back of my car. The idea that I would have to keep my lane, go into a touchscreen, go into another menu within the touchscreen, and then find and hit that small button while everything else is going on. I'm sorry, that's too much cognitive load for somebody who's just driving their car on the motorway. It should not be like that. And they've chosen that because some tech bro thought it would be better, but also cheaper, and it's not right. So anyway, I had a bit of a thing about that car. That car was getting like 4/5 stars in a lot of magazines, and I gave it 2.5. And
for that,
but not only that, there were other aspects within the screen that shouldn't have been within the screen.
Yeah,
and its ADAS was also very irritating.
I can't believe even Volvo is getting ADAS wrong.
I know. We were driving it through a city centre back to the hotel, and it would just keep bonging at me going, you're not looking at the road. I'm like, I am looking at the road. I'm looking over my shoulder to see that I'm not going to hit this scooter over here, or that this taxi's just pulling out over there, and it would go ding and just go like, oh, pay attention. You think, I've never paid more attention in my life. You cannot be this bad at this stuff. It's not right, and it's not good. And that's but I didn't say it down the line. I said it at the time. I thought it was problematic.
Is it not a bit terrible as well that you've got a car looking at your eyes constantly while you're driving as well?
It's funny, I don't know how, if it's done, it is a bit weird. for a start, and I don't know how you quantify how much safer it makes people, and I don't know, because in theory, right, it makes sense. People get tired, they get distracted.
Yeah.
The car has a technology that it can read people's eyes, and it can see where they're looking, and you can program it. You can program it through AI these days, but you can certainly program it even not using AI to teach, so the computer recognizes patterns that are associated with distraction. And therefore it can ping up a warning to go, we think you're tired or distracted. And in theory, that's not a bad thing at all. It's making a car safer. How can you argue that that's, I mean, you can argue that that's not a good thing, because you can just say, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
But actually what you're saying is, I don't care if the general public at large is less safe. That's a hard argument to make. That's a really hard argument to make. Even if you don't, I don't love the technology, but it's a really hard argument. Imagine going on a news program and having to justify the fact that you think cars should be more dangerous. I mean, it's just not an argument. Do you know what I mean? It's a really hard position to take. Probably not one you should take. But when that technology is put in so badly that it's irritating, and so people turn it off. And the head of Euro NCAP came up and says, we need to identify where people have a problem with this stuff and they turn it off, because it's not good enough, mate. And because quite often you test it on test tracks and not on the public road. I live on a fairly twisty road.
I'm aware.
And I get in most cars, and the lane keep assist will go off within 300 meters of me leaving my driveway, because because it just can't quite. They're quite often not developed, or they're not tested, or they're not honed on winding British country roads. And so the first thing I do is switch it off. Well, I shouldn't be doing that, because now when I get onto a motorway, and actually it may be useful if it was on, because I don't know, I've looked down to change the radio station or flick between one podcast and another on some too big touchscreen. Actually, lane keep assist might be useful for me, but I've turned it off. And if it's hard to turn off, I'm not going to turn it back on, because it's hard to turn it back on.
Yeah.
So there is a real discussion to be had, but they are getting better. There's no question these systems are getting better. But there is a real discussion to be had about how easy they should be to turn off, how easy they should be to turn back on again, how intrusive they ought to be, and also somebody to quantify how much difference they make, because the number of injuries and deaths on roads went down and went down and went down. I think largely because cars have become safer to crash in, but I don't think the number of collisions has reduced notably, and also because people's access to mobile phones that they can pick up and use on the phone, and distraction, because there are more distractions. I think that increases the likelihood of mishaps happening. So somewhere there's a way to integrate this technology to try and keep road casualties decreasing, and tech's got to play a part in that. And it'd be really hard. It's an impossible argument to make, and I wouldn't want to make it, that cars should be more dangerous, because it's a silly thing to say. But this tech has got to be put in properly so that people just won't get irritated about it and turn it off. Yeah,
there are a lot of irritating things in cars nowadays, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping it just remains a phase.
Yeah. And we've had cars do it. We've had cars emergency brake in the middle of. I had one to me in the middle of a village in the north of England when I was driving home, and I was driving down this high street, and a car came up to a T-junction. The car I was in clearly thought it wasn't going to stop, and just emergency braked from 20 miles an hour. Now, most people, when they brake hard at emergency stop, a lot of them won't even activate the ABS because they don't hit the brake pedal hard enough.
No.
The force with which a car can stop itself when it applies full braking from 20 miles an hour. People stopped and looked at me. They're walking down the high street. They just stopped and looked and went, "What has happened there?"
What car was that?
It was a Kia EV9. That's actually Kia have made some changes to that car since, I believe. But that is one of those things. If somebody was riding a scooter behind me, because it was a damp day, a damp autumnal day, if somebody had been riding a scooter a little bit too close behind me, they would have ridden into the back of me. No question.
So the technology there is
so
not
the technology
making
there,
people safer.
and then I just feel, and it's funny because if you don't, it's that, and that's the problem with this tech, is if it fails you once to such a great extent, you will never trust it properly again.
No.
Whereas
never.
if you and I are out and we spend a couple of days together and I drop something once, well, that's okay, I've just been a klutz once. And if I drop it again, well, it's not the end of the, it's fine. You don't suddenly not trust walking around with me because I might drop my phone, right?
Yeah.
But if a car, you're driving down a normal high street and it emergency stops and a scooter runs into the back of you and you're now responsible for somebody's broken wrists behind you, you will never trust that system again.
No.
Never trust that system again. And it's a real issue to identify how we should introduce that technology properly into cars. And for all that we've talked about how much fun this car is, there are some serious, we have to talk about these serious questions and answer them properly. And I think recently I just saw a story, I can't remember the full story, the headline, that they're going to introduce more on-road testing for ADAS equipment than there is, because a lot of it is on test tracks at the moment, and that's okay to an extent, but it doesn't replicate the full set of roads, and it really needs to. Funny enough, I was with Skoda the other month, and they were talking about their cars, and they said, no, we test all of our ADAS equipment, we test all of our advanced driving stuff, assisted driving stuff, in every market that we sell in. And they sell cars in over 100 countries worldwide. So they're testing all of their cars on the roads in every market in which they sell, which I think is really commendable, because I don't think manufacturers have to do that. I think the sign-off is much easier than that. But they said, no, if we're going to fit it with something, we want to drive it on the road in every market we sell it in.
I mean, Skoda are just an interesting company anyway, making 3D printing headrests and compostable interior components or something with their concepts.
Really good company. Yeah, really interesting company.
Serge isn't a huge fan though. He used to love a VRS something.
Right.
By the way, for people who haven't seen previous podcast episodes, Serge is the videographer for Autocar. He works underneath Matt, or he works alongside Matt.
Yes, I'm technically his line manager, but it doesn't feel like the way that I don't know, car mags are all so collaborative. It never feels like I have about 8 people who tell me what to do. I've only got one line manager, but I've got about 8 people who tell me. Serge is one of them, who give me work to do.
Yeah. So actually, I guess you've got Steve Cropley above. He's sort of, from what I can tell, he's sort of the head honcho, right?
He's kind of like how would you describe it? He's editor-in-chief.
Yeah.
So the boss is the editor, and that's the same on all titles. The person who just has editor in their title is the boss. So Steve is a kind of steering. He's a kind of a soft stop, I suppose. He's a kind of, I don't know. It's a sort of editorial advisor, I suppose, when it comes to it in a way. But he's our most experienced journalist. He is the one who knows the most people in the industry. He's the one who has talked to the most people in the industry. He has forgotten more about cars than I will ever know about cars. He's the gaffer from that point of view.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. Funny enough, Steve never gives me work to do. Well, except we record a podcast together, and I do all of the recording and the sending and the editing and everything else. But while there are a lot of people in the office. So I will get given work by the editor. The road test editor will quite often pass me work. A road tester will quite often give me first drafts to do. The news editor might give me stuff to do. Our associate editor does. Our magazine editor does. Sergio does. And our digital editor does. And our social media executive does. And our deputy editor will as well. So there's about 10 people. Then there's other admin stuff that people will give me to do. But there's 10 editorial people who might give me work to do. Can you go and do this? Yes, I can. But I only have one line manager. So it's a bit weird the way that I suppose magazines in general work compared to some other businesses. I don't only do what one person tells me to do. And when it comes to so people have. When it comes to line managing, what you're basically doing is signing off somebody else's expenses. expenses. That's
basically.
it. What does my line manager do? Gives me work to do and signs off my expenses. So that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So what are the other parts of the job that you think people might not expect to be a part of the job?
Not lots, I don't think. I think if you thought about it, you'd think, yeah, that could be something you do. I do YouTube thumbnails. Maybe that's Photoshop. So I do it. I don't have to. We've got other people who could do that. We've got designers at the office, but they're quite busy laying out the magazine, laying out pages, and because it's a YouTube thumbnail, I don't do them all, but I do most of them. One, there's a sort of set format to them anyway, but also it does involve a little bit of editorial writing because you have a bit of space at the bottom. The words have got to look the right height to length to work, which means there's quite often a lot of playing around with the words to get the right phrase to sum up what the car is about. And actually, it's possible only I know that. The designer doesn't know that, and they're not copywriters. So it's easier if I do it. So if I'm doing that, and I know exactly which picture I want to use because it sums up the car the best, and then I know what the exact car title is or what I can shorten it to for it still to make sense. So in the end, I sort of think, well, there's all these different criteria of things that I want in a YouTube thumbnail to be the right thing. Well, why don't I just do it? Because by the time I've explained it to somebody else, I could just do it. So doing YouTube thumbnails is a job that possibly people don't think I would do, that I do. But other than that, I think if you imagined what I did for a living, you'd probably be pretty close to doing it. There's a lot of sitting at a computer, a lot of sitting behind the wheel of a car, and
lots of waiting at the airport.
Lots of waiting at airports, and there's nothing you can do about that, though. Do you know what I mean? It's part of the frustration about airports is because you just go from queue to queue to queue to queue. There's actually not, although you may be there for quite a lot of time, there's not a lot of time you can actually spend working. Because you get, I might be at an airport for 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours before a flight, but actually I may only be sitting in after I've checked in and been through security and waiting for the boarding to start. That might only be a window of half an hour, and there's only so much writing you can do in half an hour, because by the time you get into reading what you've written so far, plus just reminding yourself what you're writing about.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, well, now actually I've got to go. Oh, no, actually I've got to go and get on the plane anyway.
Yeah.
So it's, but what can you do? It is easier and cheaper to take journalists to a car than it is to take cars to journalists. So there will always be an element of going to places to drive.
Yeah.
And especially this time of year, a manufacturer would like to put their car somewhere where it's more likely to be dry and brighter for the pictures, is the short of it. And also there aren't many global, I don't want to talk shop again too much, but there aren't too many global car launches in the UK because most of the rest of the world drives on the other side of the road.
Yeah.
And they don't ever drive on our side of the road.
Yeah.
So actually their journalists can really struggle with it is the wrong word, but sometimes the bill for potential damage can be higher if you have a global launch in the UK, because because a foreign journalist will be driving along who is used to driving on with the steering wheel on the left hand side. They'll be on this side of the car, not realizing that they've got all of that metal to the left of them. Somebody will come the other way and they'll think, oh, I'll just move over a bit, and they drive into a stone wall. So typically global press drives tend to be somewhere Southern Europe, and because British journalists, Japanese journalists, Australian journalists spend so much time driving on the other side of the road that it becomes natural to us. But there will be really experienced European journalists who very, very rarely, if ever, have driven with a steering wheel on this side of the car. Is
there a side you prefer?
Not anymore. I used to much prefer the right-hand drive because that's what I was used to. But these days, I can't remember how long it took me to get used to it. The first time I did it was weird, and I sometimes didn't like it. But these days, it's just second nature. I can get into any left or right-hand drive car and get on with it. I think it's a bit like if you I don't know, if you were used to using a particular saucepan at home and then you bought a different one, you'd suddenly you'd suddenly go, I can't flip this frying pan quite as easy as I can flip that one. But after you've been using both of them for a week, you'd go, oh, this is fine, no problem. So it's fine. It's I did notice it because we didn't travel much during the pandemic, that actually when we started traveling again, just took a couple of hours of getting used to again, which is probably natural enough. So if you don't keep the practice up, I suppose it goes. But no, I don't mind. But the thing about driving left-hand drive cars in the UK, which we will sometimes do, because some special cars may only be made in left-hand drive.
Yeah.
And because the UK roads are quite heavily crowned, when we talk to overseas engineers, some of them have been and driven cars in the UK, and they really like developing cars in the UK, because if they make a car that works on bad British roads, it probably works everywhere.
Yeah, that's how my car was designed.
Oh, it was. Yes. Yeah, your excellent the excellent Micra.
Yeah.
So it's got quite heavy. UK roads tend to be quite heavily crowned. We do have frost in winter, so that gets in and that breaks up. The water gets in, freezes overnight, breaks up the tarmac. So we have quite a lot of broken tarmac, quite a lot of badly repaired tarmac as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then because our fields have been developed over the years a lot smaller than some other European fields or global field farmland, with quite a lot of hedgerows and trees. So you end up with roads that are quite twisty. So, and then on top of that, you get the tree roots and stuff growing under this side of the car. So you can end up with a road that is not own. You go somewhere and all the roads are really flat, really beautifully surfaced,
like the Netherlands.
Yeah, and it all works perfectly. But in the UK, you get a car that the car is like that, and then you've got different inputs going on each side of the car, because you've got all the root stuff going on here, plus it's crowned, plus the tarmac's broken, and that's why we find we're near Gaydon here now. We find a car developed by a JLR, Jaguars in particular. Land Rovers too, for big cars actually. They're very responsive to steering, but nicely responsive. They're not hypersensitive like some sports cars can be. They're not. You drive a German car, it can feel incredibly stable in a straight line, because they do development work on the Autobahn at 150 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen in the UK. They do development work on the Autobahn, but the majority of the work is done here. So they respond very nicely to steering inputs. They have a ride which keeps a stability even when there's quite a lot going on underneath. And more cars ought to be signed off bluntly in the UK, and some manufacturers really get that. And they go, we really appreciate coming to the UK. We do development work here. We do sign off stuff here. Opel used to do it effectively. The Vauxhall Opel would come, and Vauxhalls would get a particular tune of suspension for the UK. But even when it was common across Europe, they used to still do the final sign-off in the UK. They don't anymore. But it's certainly, there are cars which are great. There's a Alfa Giulia Quadrifoglio over there. That feels like it could have been signed off in the UK, because it works really nicely on British roads. The rides and like I say, if it works here, it usually works everywhere. There are other countries with bad roads as bad as ours. But a car that is developed well for a British road will probably feel great everywhere.
Yeah. I haven't driven a car that I think has been particularly poor on British roads. Is there anything stand out that you've come across lately?
Well, a few, but I think it's not just because of British roads. I drove a JQ recently, which it's dynamically it wasn't very good, but it wasn't because it was in Britain. It's just dynamically it's very well priced, it's very well spec'd, it feels pretty good inside, built to a price that a lot of European manufacturers would turn around and go, we cannot make a car to this price that feels as good as this, because of the way the Chinese car industry is set up, with the Chinese state supporting them. It's just simple as that. A European manufacturer go, we can't make a car at this price. We can't do it. But dynamically, they were quite poor. But that will change. The first time I drove a Hyundai in the UK, it was pretty bad at the time. It would have been a Hyundai Accent or something like that. And then there were some Deus which were pretty poor. And now these people make cars that are as good as the best European stuff. And it won't be long before the Chinese manufacturers are doing that too. And also, there's also a bit of perception that, a lot of Chinese cars are a bit soulless. They're a bit dull. It's another Chinese electric crossover. But there was recently a story about a new motorcycle made by a Chinese manufacturer, which is a big cruiser, so sort of big Harley equivalent, Harley Davidson equivalent. But instead of a big V-twin or a 4-cylinder engine or whatever, it had a flat 8-cylinder engine. That's pretty cool. Nobody else is making flat 8-cylinder engines and putting them in motorbikes, but Chinese manufacturers, that's cool, that's exciting, and that's fun. Yeah. And that requires imagination and excitement and enthusiasm. So it's clearly, but people said it about Japanese manufacturers in the 80s and 90s.
For sure.
They were like, oh, these cars I don't understand the Japanese, and they want to take over the world, and we don't get them. But actually, the Japanese are really good fun, and they make really entertaining cars, and they're it's a fun place to go, and they're fun people. So and we've become very used to that, and I think probably in 20, 30 years time, we'll feel the same way about Chinese cars too.
I've always thought the ultimate way to change public perception of your car brand is to just release a really good sports car.
Oh yeah.
And take it racing.
Yeah. 100%.
It's just sort of the golden ticket, really. You just make that, and then you can base all of your design around the radical look of your sports car, and you're sort of sold, really.
Yeah, and I think, as you were saying about like opinion leaders, with Hyundai, they've convinced a core of people that they make really exciting, fun cars. Yeah. And that will spread because everybody who knows that and believes it, if you go to a track day, you will see i20Ns and i30Ns and stuff like that. And, there's a keen owners club and stuff like that. And it does filter out. It does filter out. People now, when they think Hyundai, they think things that they did not think 25 years ago.
Not even 5 years ago.
Not a question. Yeah. And it can take a while, but people will get there, and they can do it. Yeah.
Well, they did get one of the higher ups at BMW M. Of course, a guy whose paws would have been all over this car.
It would have been, yes. Albert Biermann.
Albert
Biermann, yes. And,
that's it.
Dr. Biermann. I haven't seen him for a little while. He's sort of stepped back a bit from day to day running the place, but he was still there as an advisor. And he was the head of BMW M, and Hyundai took him on as the head of its N division.
Yeah.
And they said when they did it, they said, look, he said when he did it, he said, look, I didn't expect to be leaving BMW M to go anywhere else, and I would not have gone to Hyundai N if they didn't absolutely believe in what they were doing and in making proper drivers' cars. And I really like the i30N was good. Some people thought the ride was a bit hard. You could get a slightly softer setup one, I think. It didn't have a limited slip diff, maybe. And then the i20N, which I thought was the standout hot hatch in its class. Because I thought it had a slightly more supple ride than a Ford Fiesta ST, but still had that really nice thing where you turn in, if you lift off the throttle a bit, or you just turn in slightly on the brakes, it would just tuck in really nicely. Just wanted to help you steer into a corner, and they use this slightly cheesy phrase, corner rascal, which is a bit naff, but it's kind of
true.
Yeah, it's kind of right. Yeah, they're kind of right. It kind of does do that. It kind of is cool. And I haven't driven the Ioniq 6N yet, but one of my colleagues says that the 5N is cool. The 6N is a bit lower. It's maybe a bit less silly agile. It's a bit more precise instead, and it's quite a good thing. And as we speak, an Astra VXR has just pulled up over there. That's still a really good-looking car, or is it not?
That's aged
three-door.
Brilliantly.
Really good-looking car.
I'm going to turn the camera around so people can see. Yeah, that I think is a a car that has aged incredibly.
Yeah.
And you know what has also aged incredibly, if you ask me? The Fiesta. The Fiesta, whoa.
So what, 2008-ish or the...
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, the 2008
I think so too.
Fiesta has aged incredibly. And I know on the Autocar website, on your little profile bio thing, you said a 2009 Fiesta Z-Tech is one of your favorite cars to drive.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, no, it's not a Bugatti or a Ferrari or anything. It's that.
Yes, it's funny because people sometimes say, "What's the best car you've ever driven?" In
Yep.
this job, that's the
It's
biggest.
the
That's the number one
one.
question if you do this for a living. People say, "What's the best car you've ever driven?" And I mean, the answer could be Ferrari F40 or McLaren F1 or light car. The most engaging, fun cars I've ever driven: light car company Rocket, Caterham 7. I love Caterhams a lot.
Yes, I can't wait
But-
to go there next week.
Oh, that'd be so cool. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, I'm
because
getting a
it's
tour
such
around
a
the
cool
factory.
place. It's such a great place. And they're such nice people and they're such good cars. But all those cars are either built with a very distinctive purpose in mind,
Yeah.
or they cost £1 million, whatever they cost
Yeah.
at the time. The Ford Fiesta Z-Tech S, which had
That's
a 5-speed gearbox, 1.6 litre engine with 120-ish horsepower, 25, something like that. And but it was a small hatchback. It cost, I think, 15, 18 grand at the time. I mean, today it would be 25, whatever it might be. But you know, it was value. It was good value in its class at the time. It was a sixth gear away from being perfect. It was a bit buzzy on the motorway because the gearing was reasonably short. But the ride and handling combination of that, it steered really nicely. It rode really well. It moved around like a hot hatchback too. It was a warm hatch rather than a hot hatch. But you could drive it every day. It was such good fun to drive, and yet it was cheap. It was affordable. You know, it was a great value. That's harder to do than it is to make a £1 million driver's car.
Completely agree.
Because, I mean, all right, making £1 million driver's car does come with limitations because they probably have a smaller development budget. Like if you're developing the next Lamborghini, the next Bugatti, the development budget probably isn't that big because they'll only sell 500 of them. So even though they're going to be £2 million or whatever, actually, if you're going to try and make money out of Bugatti as a company, you're not selling many cars, which means that even though they're expensive, your development budget probably isn't that big. And the development budget is bigger for a Fiesta, of course. But the fact that at every point in the way, somebody would have been chipping out money because it's hard to make money out of small cars. Somebody would have gone, what can we not fit? What can we not put on this car?
Yeah.
To get this down, to go, right, we can now sell a Fiesta for £15,000. And for somebody to still go, yeah, but I'd really like it if it was great fun to drive. I think that makes it, and it's not the obvious answer to what's the best car in the world, but the best car in the world is something that's great fun and really affordable, I think. Because that's the hard thing to do. That's the hard
Bring
thing.
the price point down, but keep the quality up.
Kia Picanto is as good as it is refinement, fun to drive, interior quality and feel. You could drive 30,000 miles a year on if you wanted to. It would be fine. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, a Range Rover would be more comfortable, but you would be physically no worse off after a year of driving a Picanto than you were in an S-Class, you know? But it costs, whatever it costs, under 20 grand or whatever they are now. And it's just, that is automotive engineering at its best, because it's people making the best of what they have with very limited resources. And, you know, all right, it's great if a car has 8 turbochargers and 16 cylinders and, you know, the maximum speed will drain its fuel tank in 5 minutes. You know, that stuff's all amazing, great, brilliant. But the genius of automotive engineering is at the other end of the scale, I think. So and I would have gladly. I think most of those Fiestas are probably a bit tired these days because it's nearly 20 years old. But if you could sort of, and cars do wear and they do age and they do get baggy and everything else. But actually, if I could drive again one of those Z-Tech S's in perfect as new condition, I think it would feel great today. In fact, better than most new cars, but it's got better visibility, it's lighter, it rides better, it's got very little annoying ADAS on it. I bet if I could find a really nice one that had never turned a wheel, I bet I could drive it today and people would be blown away by it. They think, oh, this is brilliant.
No, I'm sure. I don't think people would expect the sort of handling that you've described as being possible in a Fiesta.
Oh, really nice, really good handling car. There are good handling small cars today too, but I think there are there's fewer small cars than there were because it's increasingly hard to make money out of selling them. So many manufacturers have stopped. I mean, Ford don't make a Fiesta anymore.
Which I can't believe. It's still one of the most popular second-hand cars.
Yeah. It's really, I think when there was a manufacturer who said, Suzuki recently, when they launched the current generation Swift, they said, look, the market for B segment super minis is not what it was, but because there are fewer manufacturers in it, they thought they would sell more Swifts than ever, because they said, look, I can't remember the stats, but they said, look, something like 60% of the super mini market of 5 years ago, the manufacturers who are responsible for 60% of that market are no longer selling super minis. I think Renault didn't expect to be selling a non-hybridized version of the Clio at the moment, but because nobody else is, you can buy a base Clio with a manual gearbox because nobody else sells a car like that. I think there's still really a place for that, which is why the EU has been talking about bringing in
their K car.
Effectively the EU equivalent of a K car. I don't know what it will. So here's the the difficulty with that is there are lobbying groups who say, well, we don't want cars to get any less safe, so we don't think we should exempt a certain class of cars from having the ADAS stuff, which adds thousands of pounds to the price of a car, all of the sensors and everything else. It's really expensive to fit. And when you're on non-existent budgets in the first place, tiny profit margins.
Yeah.
To be able to, if a manufacturer could get rid of that stuff, that would be great. But there will be a lot of groups who say you can't suddenly make cars less safe to sell on the roads. But then also, the other stuff that's expensive is meeting like the latest emissions regulations. So Euro 6, whatever, or Euro 7. If a manufacturer could get away without fitting petrol particulate filters or a hybrid system, that again might suddenly make the European car industry more viable because, great, we can sell a Clio and make €1,000 rather than making 80p. But there'll be obviously, well, you can't sell cars that aren't any less clean. So I don't know what the K car regulations are unless you're limiting their size and everything else, which means a manufacturer then has to go and develop an entirely new product line and an entirely new platform. And that costs billions. So while it's well and good to say we think there should be a class of small, lightweight car in Europe that doesn't have a big environmental footprint, defining what that is really tough. And whether that definition can be come to via politicians from 28 different countries who will not agree on it straight away. How long does it take for European regulations to come in? Car manufacturers don't have that time. When Chinese manufacturers are doing the Uber model of flogging cars very cheaply and just trying to flood the market with them and dominate the market, dominate other players out of existence. I don't know how much time European manufacturers have to wait for somebody to say, okay, this is going to be the European class. Unless the very straightforward thing would be to say, okay, you can sell cars of up to 1,200 kilos, whatever it might be, and they don't need all of the ADAS and they don't need particulate filters and hybrid systems or whatever. That would take a lot of cost out of selling a Suzuki Swift or a Renault Clio. But then but it also does the same favours to overseas, because the same could apply to Chinese manufacturers too. So I don't know what that regulation is going to be that is supposed to save the compact European car.
Yeah, I know Citroën. Well, what I read in Autocar is that the CEO at Citroën is quite curious about it because he wants the company to have more of a brand identity again. As far as brands and identities go, though, you've touched on Renault and what they're up to. I think the Renault 5 is
Yeah.
going to be a big thing for them in the future because, well, first of all, the Alpine A290 is a good car. I walk past one all the time when I go to uni. But I think that car, with its insane design, is going to age a lot like the Mark II Civic. You know, the one with that spaceship design?
Oh, yeah.
Because,
And sort of high gear lever type thing.
yeah. So that car looked insane when it first came out. I think it's aged pretty terribly, but you know it's a like
it's a Civic.
You know what it is.
You know it's a Civic.
And I imagine that the Renault 5 is going to age just like that. It's
So you
going
think
to
it will age badly?
I think it's going to age terribly.
Oh, interesting.
And I think,
interesting.
but
Because it's a retro-ish design in the first instance?
yes, but I think there's a good chance they went into it knowing that it could age terribly, but they know that it doesn't matter because they need to define the generation now.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if because they'll sell it for 6 years. So if it doesn't matter if it ages badly in 10 years because they'll have stopped making it 4 years ago.
And I have no clue how much they're selling them for, but I imagine they're not super expensive.
No, they're quite good value, I think. The prices are 20-something, which is pretty good for an EV.
Yeah.
And if you get the big battery one, the range is fine, actually. The range is not bad.
So right now, I think people are looking at that going, yeah, the value's decent. It's interesting looking.
Oh, it's
and
really interesting looking car.
It feels like an upgrade right now. It feels like you're stepping into the future, a lot like how that Civic did. But we also know that basically 0 design cues of the Mark II Civic can be seen in Hondas now.
That's interesting.
So yeah, I think the 5 is going to be the exact same.
Yeah. Because some manufacturers love a design language, don't they? They love a define. An Audi looks like an Audi, and whereas a Renault 5 does not necessarily look like any other Renault. No. But it feels to me for an industry, the European industry, which is under such pressure, it makes total sense to me. And I think it was on. There is a story about that car. Stop me if you've heard it. But the boss of Renault at the time was effectively he'd come in to his first couple of days at Renault and he'd said, right, what have we got coming up? And he went to the design studio and they were presenting a load of different cars to him and he was like, it's fine, it's okay, but I'm not loving it. And then eventually somebody went, well, okay, we've got another one to show you. But it's not part of our plan. We haven't planned to introduce it. But here is this thing, this 5 concept that we've made. And he said, that is the one. That is the one you need to put in production. Forget that one and that one and that one. Put that into, what's the plan? And they went, well, in 5, we think we could introduce it in 5 years' time at about 35,000 euros. He said, I want you to put it on sale in 2 years' time at under 30.
Yeah.
And they went, oh, okay, all right, we'd better do that then. And I don't know if I'm just noticing every single one I see, because that is a thing.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Do you know what I mean? If you buy a car, I bet you notice every single micro you see. Like yours.
Oh my God.
Whereas,
I go crazy when I see another micro.
And so there is that thing, there is a phrase for it, which I can't remember. But also, I do think it is doing really well for them. And because why wouldn't it? And also, if you are a manufacturer with decades or a century of heritage, and people remember those cars from when they were growing up, why wouldn't you use it? Why would you not use it? Because there are so many cars people can choose from. Give them a reason to choose yours. And if that's a bit of nostalgia, if that's a bit of, I like the look of that, do it.
Yeah.
And because people can buy on price, and if they do buy on price and equipment, they may well look beyond a European car quite easily and buy it and buy something from somewhere else. So, if I was in charge of a European car manufacturer, I would totally be looking at the back catalogue and thinking, what have we done that's cool? And it's difficult for designers because they don't want to make retro cars. They like to define new eras. They like to make new things. They don't like to rehash old things.
Yeah.
I get that. I totally get that. I wouldn't want to write stuff that has been written, the same 30 years ago. I want to write something new.
Yeah.
But you've got to sell cars. And that's where it needs somebody like what's the difference between uninterested and disinterested? Somebody who comes in with dispassion and just goes, forget all that nonsense. that's the one who thinks like the buyer. That's what you need, is a boss who comes in and thinks like the consumer. And it's difficult. We find it in our business. All businesses find it. People who are so close to the brand that they just get a bit. They forget exactly how to think like the customer, and that's why a good CEO will come in and do that and just go, no, that's the car you need to make, because that's the car people will see in a showroom and think, I want one of those. And I think the 5 probably does that.
Absolutely does. Yeah.
Even if it does look. I'll be interested to have this conversation with you in 10 years' time and how we feel about the 5 at the time. Should we make an agreement to come back in 2035 and go?
2035, we'll sit in this spot.
This spot in this car park. We'll have a look and see if there's any Renault 5s and see what we think of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sort of 10-ish year old cars around here, aren't there?
And that generation of car has aged very, very well, I'd say.
Actually, yeah, I think so. That Astra is the car. That 3-door Astra is the car. I think there was a concept version, and it would have been Top Gear at the time. Jeremy Clarkson said, if you make that car look like that in production, I will eat my own hair. And they did. And I think he ate an omelette with his hair in it
oh my God.
on the telly box at the time. So yeah, but I think it's a sensational looking car.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, no, people at that sort of time, car design, I think, was absolutely nailed. It's modern, but it's not trying too hard to be something. We see concepts coming out now, and I think they're all trying way too hard to define an era and then drag people along, trying to convince them that, yes, this is the way we should go, like what Audi's done. I'm sorry, that thing is not inspired by the TT. And Jaguar as well. Yeah, 2 concepts which basically look the exact
brutalist
same.
Architecture. Yeah. So, do you think? So, what was it? How was I going to ask this? So, do you think peak car design has passed? But also interesting. I asked Ian Callum, the former Jaguar chief designer, about a quote that I was told by another designer, so it's slightly convoluted. Another designer had said to me in an interview, design needs to be challenging. Now, that designer's audience, because he worked in advanced design, his audience were people within a car company, management within a car company, rather than the consumer. So I suppose he might want to make stuff that's challenging because his audience is a core group of staff. But I said to Ian Callum, when we interviewed him recently, I said, look, this designer had said design needs to be challenging. Do you think that's true? And the more he thought about it, the more cross he got about it. In the end, he said, no, I abhor that idea that design needs to be challenging. Yeah. Because one of the arguments is that if a design is challenging, you're less likely to get bored by it. And he said, but the problem is you still might, if you make a car which is challenging and not attractive, you still might get bored by it. But now you're bored of something ugly. Yeah. So, whereas actually, if you just make a car that is beautiful to look at, it can stay beautiful to look at, even if it wasn't challenging. Yeah. And I'm thankfully, and I thought, I'm glad he said that, because I agree. And there was a time when Jaguar's strapline, and I didn't use it for very long, if I remember. But I remember going on a launch event once for I forget what car it was. It might have been F-Type or something. And they had a board up when we got into the press conference, and it said Jaguar, fast, beautiful cars. And I thought, that's pretty good. Yeah. If you were defining what Jaguar ought to be, fast, beautiful cars. Yeah. Great. Why not? What an amazing place to be. Yeah. And
that's exactly what good car design is. I completely agree, because I think companies now are challenging design in the complete wrong way. They need to challenge themselves to just be more beautiful, rather than trying to challenge the sanity of the driver. And they are doing that with design, as we talked about, with infotainment, and even just production models that just sort of look dull and boring, and things that won't age well. Yeah. But what do you think is the well, is there a most beautiful car for you? Is that too difficult to ask?
Well, it would change every day, I think.
Yeah,
But sure, for certainly there might be a short list you could make of the best looking cars
Yeah.
in the world, and I think Ferrari 250 short wheelbase is a great looking car.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Massive fan of Lamborghini Miura. Some Rolls-Royce saloons of this, probably sort of like the sort of like Bentley S2 of the sort of 50s was really elegant, really. There's Citroen DS was a great looking car. You could get a nub of sort of 20, 30 beautiful cars,
Yeah.
I think, quite easily. And the thing is that none of them were necessarily challenging when they were new. I mean, I love the look of the Alfa SZ. It's not a beautiful car, and it is challenging to look at. I happen to love it. Some people hate it, but there are a core of, there's lots of them actually, really good looking cars that weren't challenging when you first saw them. When I first saw an Aston DB9, that was not a challenging car to look at. I thought,
No.
that's a beautiful car.
Yeah, I love that thing.
20 years on pretty much to the year, it's still a beautiful car.
And it basically set the standard for Aston Martin design for that coming generation.
Yeah, which actually was a bit of I think, yes, possibly slightly problematically in that a lot of Astons looked the same and did the same.
Yeah.
But there's certainly an elegance to all of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, slightly possibly from a business perspective, Aston had a phase of making cars. Advantage was not that different to a DB9, which was not that different to a DBS, which didn't look that different to a Rapide. And there was a time when they made a lot of, and they were all on the same architecture, so they all have the same architectural flaws because that extruded aluminium architecture is quite stiff, but didn't leave loads of interior space. So a Rapide is not very big inside, but I love them, and I think they're great to drive, and they're also very elegant to look at. But they did have a phase of, I think, making too many cars that slightly looked and did the same thing in the same way that a bit like sort of McLaren arguably has in the new McLaren era. They're all mid-engines. They've all got turbocharged engine back there. They've all got flappy paddle gear shift. They've all got a carbon fibre tub. They've all got 2 seats. Some are more expensive and cheaper than others, but fundamentally, if you took an MP4 12C all the way through to a 720S today, you would sort of go, well, I mean, they all slightly do a similar thing, whereas, and they've never made loads of money. Whereas if you take Ferrari, which has been very profitable during that time, and you have a look at a Roma, well, that's quite different to the front engine V12, which is quite different to the mid-engine supercar, which is different again to the SUV. They've had which is different from the convertible, and
then they also did
had
the
a much broader
Monza
range. Yeah. Then there's the specials as well. So there's, and look, they make big profits, and lots of car companies do not make any money. I thought that when this Aston went public too early, I think, because the investors wanted to get paid quicker than the company was ready. But for a time when they had a CEO who said, right, we've got a plan. The plan is we will have 7 models. They will be different, and we will replace one of them every 6 or 7 years in the model lineup. That made a lot of sense to me, because you would have, at the time, they would have had a traditional Aston, front-engined V12 or V8 or whatever. I'm sorry to your listener who may be around, but we can hear something. We're in the British Motor Museum car park, and we can hear something which may not appear on
that.
You see, it's too foggy. I can't.
It's red. It was in that garage there.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yes.
I see. So yeah, that building over there is where the BMM workshops are.
Okay.
So that's where they maintain and restore and fettle the cars that they have. And you can't walk into the workshop, but you can there's a viewing area, so you can see what they're working on at the time. I think there's a Jaguar XJR13 in bits at the minute, but there's cool stuff in pieces. I'm sounding like I'm doing an advert for the British Motor Museum, but it is a cool place to come. And that is one of the nicest bits, is you can see what they're working on at the time. And then there's a road around the outside, a little access road that runs around the outside of the main building, where they do shakedowns of stuff that they're putting back together. So I did
Okay.
the London to Brighton veteran car run recently.
You did, yes.
And they had these Vauxhalls, which they'd sort of, just made sure were working properly in that thing. And then to get used to how to drive them, we did a couple of laps of the outside. They do stuff during the summer. They do these, what do they call them? Gate and gathering, I think they call them. And they will get something old out and drive it around a bit. I think they had a Metro 6R4 or something like that recently, last time they did one stuff. It's a cool place. I do like it here. I digress. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the idea was that Aston would have 6 or 7 distinct model lines. You'd replace one of them every year, so each car would have a 7-year model life. You'd have a big coupe, a mid-engine supercar, an SUV, a convertible. A proper broad model range.
Yeah.
That made sense to me, but they hadn't implemented that properly before they floated on the stock market, and it really didn't work because the company at that point wasn't back into profitability, and it's still now that anyway. In the end, that model lineup got canned, and they're now doing something else, but it's still haven't. So the first idea for them to do a mid-engine supercar would have been 12 years ago when they came up with that idea. When did the DB11 come out? Because that would have been the first.
2015,
Oh,
14.
So it's 10 years ago when that new lineup was mooted, and they still haven't got a mid-engine supercar on. So they've had the Valkyrie, but they haven't had a.
There is a greater
mid-engine supercar,
variety with their stuff, though.
There is, much more so. Yeah, much more so. They didn't have DBX at that point, and that is, that should be. It's a great car, actually, but that should be the one at the top of the range, which is top of the range is the wrong word. That should be the volume car that is letting the other stuff.
Is it not at the moment?
Well, it is, but it's not doing enough numbers. That's the
Okay.
short of it. None of them are doing enough numbers. That's the problem. Is that, and it's true of a lot of niche, smallish volume manufacturers, is that they don't make a lot of money. And if they're not part of a bigger group, I mean, imagine if Rolls-Royce wasn't part of BMW Group, would it get the benefits, or Bentley, would they get the benefits of using? Rolls-Royce does have its own architecture, but
Just a helping hand at the end of the day.
yeah, exactly. A lot of the electronic systems, a lot of the ADAS, a lot of the other things that buttons that they put their own finishes on or whatever. So many of the sort of subsystems that can be used from elsewhere within the group can make a small company profitable in a way that standalone these things just won't.
Yeah.
These things won't make money because they just can't afford it. I mean, imagine being a company the size of Aston but developing your own infotainment system. I mean, it would just be bonkers.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare.
Even for a manufacturer the size of JLR, they're not a big car company by any stretch of the imagination. Land Rover does 500,000 cars a year. That's still relatively small in group terms. Volkswagen Group's probably doing 11 million cars a year. Toyota's probably doing the same. And developing cars is really expensive. A great way to lose money is to start a car company.
Yep. But as we said earlier, there are so many brands that just do it for fun because they just enjoy coach making.
Yes, I think there's a lot of niche British manufacturers who are effectively underwritten, I suppose, by a bigger company that doesn't mind losing a bit of money every year because they like owning a small car company.
Do you have any thoughts on Charge Holdings buying TVR?
Oh, no, I don't know. No, because I don't want to sound harsh. I don't know what Charge Holdings is enough. I don't know enough about Charge Holdings to know. I know that I've been outside the factory that TVR bought, leased, whatever, in Wales, and it's far too big for a startup car company. It didn't need to be in a place that big. The initial target, we're going to build 1,000 cars a year. We saw the car too soon, the concept too soon. It was underdeveloped. It wasn't finished when we did see it. It's just the sensible thing, as much as any small car company would have been sensible, well, I can't say this was my idea. I think I read about it somewhere. Somebody saying what they should have done is made a couple of cars and started racing them and gone, look, we're just developing a car for racing. Get a couple of sponsors. It would have cost money, but you could have just proven some of the tech, and then a couple of people might have gone, yeah, I wouldn't mind buying one of those. A bit like the Ginetta G40. They started, they were a really popular cheap race car, and then they sold a few road cars. But they could have just done that, done a bit of racing, and then a couple of people would have gone, oh, I'll buy one of those. And you could have just started very small and then trickle out a few more here and there. But the idea you were suddenly going to launch 1,000 cars a year,
when a lot of people don't even know who you are.
People don't know who you are. I mean, there is a market, I think, for an analog front-engine, rear-wheel drive sports car of the fashion that does not exist much anymore.
I'd love one.
Yeah, I would.
If I had the money.
I would. One of the best cars I've driven this year was an MGB resto mod by Frontline, right? And they've got a 2.5 litre or 2.3 litre Mazda/Ford Duratec engine in the front, 6-speed gearbox, rear-wheel drive, limited slip diff, lovely interior, beautifully put together, really expensive. Like they need, I want to say they're like 130 grand base, which is quite a lot of money for an MGB, but really nice, really lovely, really engaging, really analog, really, really lovely. And they might do a handful a year, but that's okay because they're a small company and they make a profit out of doing it. And that is the way to do that sort of thing, and not the way TVR went about it and then still keep going on about it. And you just think, come on, it's time to put that car out of its misery. It's not, when are we, just give it a rest, lads.
So
you
don't think the
I don't know.
Is ever being made?
I don't know. It's now when did they first say they were going to make it? 2017, 2017, 18?
17, 18, I think, yeah.
So it's now a 7-8-year-old design, and there's what, one prototype. I mean, come on, it's just
So Charge make they do EV conversions of classic cars, and they say that TVR inevitably will be an EV company,
right?
But I think that by the time they do that, they either have to carve out a brand new market or recognize that no TVR fan, unless they've gone completely crazy, will want an EV TVR. I don't think the people who like TVRs, these cars which are a bit crazy with insane engines, they just aren't going to recognize it. They're not going to recognize it as a TVR. They're not going to buy an EV TVR.
No, I don't think there are established makers of sports cars who have planned electric models, and then they say the problem is that customers are not coming to us and saying we want an electric one. Even like bigger car companies like Ineos, which isn't making any money either, I don't think, and is not selling quite enough. It's not selling as many cars as I would like to. But their boss says, look, people are not knocking on our door and saying they want an electric Grenadier. What they are coming is and saying, when are you going to put a V8 in it? And I think with small niche sports cars, the same sort of thing may be true. I don't think people aren't knocking on the door at Caterham and going they want an electric Caterham. They're just they're kind of just not doing it, So I like the idea of an electric driver's car, and I've driven a few. Well, as we talked about the Hyundai Ioniq earlier, I drove a Vauxhall Mokka GSE the other day.
Okay.
And it's really good to drive. It's got really terrific damping and suspension, and it's really good fun. You don't expect it because it's a Vauxhall Mokka, but it was real. But I am quite increasingly enthused about the idea of an electric driver's car, because I think manufacturers have gone, well, we discovered we can make electric cars, then we discovered we can get them into the public's consciousness that there is it's not a tipping point in take-up, but certainly a certain level of acceptance. We're still not quite at a tipping point where everybody's buying one, but there's a certain level of acceptance. And then it's in my column this week, funnily enough, this thing, Cropley interviewed a guy from McLaren Applied Technologies only a couple of years ago. He said there were 4 phases. Phase 1, proving you can do it, Nissan Leaf, Tesla Roadster. Phase 2, getting it into the public awareness and consciousness and acceptance, Jaguar I-Pace, Mercedes EQ models, whatever. Phase 3 was improving the efficiency
Okay.
and selling people on improved efficiency. So
Right.
800 volt architecture and certain inverters and stuff like that. And only phase 4 would be manufacturers really majoring on their brand criteria and strong points. So like, you know, BMW selling the ultimate driving machine as an EV. But as it turns out, I think there's nothing terribly sexy in trying to sell people the idea of a clever inverter or 800 volt architecture. As long as a car's efficient enough and it's got enough range, I think that's enough for most people. I don't think you can sell somebody the idea, an EV, on the fact that it will do 500 miles between charges, but you're not going to sell them a car because it does 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour as opposed to 3.5. It's just not.
Yeah.
But you can sell somebody the idea of an EV because turns out it's just as good to drive or better to drive than any other BMW. If you can get to that point.
Yeah.
So I think that this sort of phase 4 of the EV business is arriving sooner than some analysts think, because manufacturers have to sell these cars, and how else are they going to do it? You've got to make you want one.
Yeah.
The same way that how you can either sell them incredibly cheaply, so you just buy one, which suits Chinese manufacturers, but it doesn't suit premium car makers.
No.
Or car makers who don't have any other tangible reason to give you to buy one. So they've got to give you a tangible reason to buy one, and that's got to be because you want one. You must want, you could buy one of those, but we want you to have one of these. The Renault 5 does it because it's interesting to look at, even if it dates. But the reason I'm excited about the electric driver's car is because there are some manufacturers who spent 100 years telling us their cars are quite good to drive. Well, now they've got to still do that with an electric one. So I'm quite enthused about the idea of an electric driver's car, in a way. Because there are some already which are engaging and fun. BMW iX3 is pretty good. Mocha GSE is pretty good. Ioniq 5N is really great fun.
Yeah.
There are others that are getting there as well.
Yeah.
So there's cool stuff around, which is nice.
They're getting there.
They're
getting there. Right. Well, I mean, we've been talking for more or less 2 hours.
Oh, goodness me.
So I suppose we'll have to round it off.
Well, thanks for your patience.
Well, thanks for coming on. I mean,
That was a pleasure.
You have spent all day yapping.
I have.
Obviously, you've gone from Cropley to me.
Yeah. Well, that's 3 hours of recording, but the nice thing is, mate, it's good fun, and I could do another 3. So
Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic.
my pleasure.